It was supposed to be a night of reflection, a night of prayer, a night of peace. But for 25-year-old Irene Garza, it would become the night that would end her life and shatter the faith of a community forever. On Easter weekend in 1960, Irene, known for her beauty, intelligence, and kindness, walked into Sacred Heart Catholic Church, just like she had done so many times before, a place where she had gone for solace, for guidance, and for peace. But that night, something would happen inside that church that would change everything. The world Irene knew, the world that had once been full of promise and hope, would be ripped apart. Hours later she was gone, vanished without a trace, and the very sanctuary she trusted became the scene of a brutal crime, so horrifying it would remain unsolved for over 56 years. Imagine the horror of her family, the terror of the townspeople, and the disbelief that something so vile could happen in a place meant to be safe for everyone. Something unspeakable, something evil, had occurred in a place so sacred it was supposed to be safe for everyone. But Irene's death was no ordinary murder, no ordinary crime. Irene wasn't just murdered. She was raped, beaten, suffocated, and left to die in the dark, all alone, betrayed by someone she trusted in the very place she believed was a refuge. And the man who was last seen with her, the one who heard her final confession, was a man of the cloth, a priest, Father John Feit. For over 5 decades the killer walked free. The case went cold. No one was held accountable for Irene's tragic end. But in 2016, after years of relentless searching, the unimaginable happened. A story long buried in the depths of silence was finally unearthed. A long-awaited justice was about to be served. This is the story of Irene Garza, her final confession, the priest who betrayed her trust, and the fight for justice that took over half a century to win. Stay with us as we unravel the chilling events that led to her death, the twisted truth that no one could have predicted. It was 1960, a time when the world outside was changing. But in McAllen, Texas, things still moved at a slower pace. The town was small, close-knit, a place where everyone knew everyone, and trust was a currency more valuable than gold. McAllen was a town where neighbors looked out for each other. It was a community that gathered together every Sunday for church, a place where faith in God and faith in each other were intertwined. Sacred Heart Catholic Church was at the center of it all, a symbol of peace, a refuge where people came to find solace in troubled times. Irene Garza was no stranger to this sanctuary. Born and raised in McAllen, she was a woman known for her beauty and grace. A former beauty queen, Irene was the pride of her family and community. She wasn't just a pretty face. Irene was intelligent, driven, and deeply committed to her work as a schoolteacher. She dedicated herself to helping the children of McAllen, especially those who came from disadvantaged backgrounds. She was an inspiration to many, and her future seemed limitless. But like so many people in McAllen, Irene had deep faith. She was a regular at Sacred Heart, attending Mass and seeking peace through confession. It was in that confessional, just before Easter, where her life would take its fateful turn. For Irene, the church was more than just a place to pray. It was where she found the strength to keep going. But that night, as she entered the confessional, she had no idea that it would be the last time she would walk out of it. The man who was supposed to guide her, the one who stood between her and God, was Father John Feit. A visiting priest at Sacred Heart, Feit was 27 years old at the time. He had a presence that made people trust him. To most, he was a man of God, someone who exuded authority and peace. But there were whispers. For those who worked closely with him, There was something unsettling about Father Feit. Stories of a temper, a coldness that didn't quite match the kindness you'd expect from someone in his position. And yet, no one suspected the darkness lurking beneath his robes. Father Feit had come to McAllen from Phoenix, and no one thought anything was amiss. He was just another priest, another man of the cloth, like so many before him. What no one could have guessed was that Feit harboured a secret, one that would remain hidden for far longer than anyone could imagine. Until on the evening of April 16, 1960, at 7:30 p.m., Irene walked into that confessional. It was supposed to be a routine evening for her, just as she had done many times before. She was seeking peace, looking for solace, the way she always had. But that night, the man she trusted, the man who stood between her and God, would lead her into a nightmare. Father Feit didn't offer her the comfort she expected. Instead, he led her away from the confessional and into the private areas of the church. What happened next remains a chilling mystery. No one truly knows the details of what occurred behind those closed doors. But by the time Irene's family began to worry, she was no longer in the church. The place she had trusted had become her prison. Father Feit, the man who had heard her confession, was now the last person to see her alive. The following morning, Irene's family was frantic. Her car was found abandoned near the church, a haunting clue that something was terribly wrong. A single high-heeled shoe was discovered on the side of the road, an eerie sign that something had gone terribly wrong. Her family searched the town, speaking to the police and anyone who might have seen something, but nothing led them to Irene. No one had seen her leave the church. No one had heard any screams. The church had closed for the night, but Irene was gone. The town of McAllen, once peaceful and trusting, was now filled with fear and confusion. For 3 days, Irene's family and the community searched in vain, but it wasn't until April 19, 1960 that their worst fears became a reality. Irene's body was found in an irrigation canal just outside McAllen. The brutality of the crime was unimaginable. She had been raped, beaten, and suffocated. The brutality of the crime sent shock waves through the community. The town of McAllen was in shock. How could such a crime happen in their community? And, the most chilling detail, Father Feit, the last person to see Irene, was now the main suspect. His story seemed rehearsed, too perfect, and there were strange injuries on his hands that raised further suspicion. For decades, Irene's case went cold. Despite the growing suspicion around Father Feit, there was no concrete evidence to arrest him. Feit continued to deny any involvement, sticking to his story that he had no idea what had happened after hearing Irene's confession. The case seemed to stall. The town waited. But nothing changed. Year after year, the anniversary of Irene's death brought only grief. But her family, especially her cousins Linda de Lavina and Noemi Ziegler, never gave up. They fought for answers. They never stopped searching, even when it seemed like the world had moved on. They kept pushing for the truth, despite the years of silence. Then, in 2002, the case took a surprising turn. Dale Tackney, a former priest who had known Father Feit, came forward with a chilling confession. Tackney revealed that Feit had confessed to him in 1963 that he had suffocated a woman after hearing her confession. This was the break that the case needed. Even with this revelation, the wheels of justice turned slowly. Father Feit had moved away, living quietly in Arizona. But in 2016, after 56 years, the unimaginable happened. Father John Feit, now 83 years old, was arrested for the murder of Irene Garza. The arrest of Father Feit shocked the community. The man who had been the last to see Irene alive was now facing charges for her brutal murder. His trial would force the family to relive the horrors of that night, to confront the man who had taken their beloved Irene away. The prosecution painted a damning picture of Father Feit. They revealed his past, the suspicions that had surrounded him, and the strange details of his story. The defense, however, tried to hold on to the last threads of hope, claiming there was not enough direct evidence to convict Feit. But the truth, the overwhelming weight of it, began to settle in. The jury could see it. They could feel it. This was a man who had used his position to take advantage of a young woman who had trusted him. The trial was an emotional roller coaster for Irene's family. Every day they sat in the courtroom, listening to the details of what had happened to their beloved Irene. It wasn't just about the murder anymore. It was about the pain of a young life taken too soon, the betrayal of someone who should have been her protector. But finally, after everything, after all the years of silence, the wait for justice was over. In 2016, Father John Feit was found guilty of the murder of Irene Garza. The man who had caused so much pain, who had taken away the future of a woman with so much promise, was now held accountable for his actions. The guilty verdict didn't bring Irene back, and it didn't heal the scars of those who loved her, but it was a step toward closure, a final piece in the puzzle that had haunted McAllen for decades. For Irene's family, for the community, and for everyone who had believed in her, it was a bittersweet moment of justice at last. Father John Feit was finally held accountable for his horrific crime 56 years after it took place. But even with his conviction, something still feels unresolved. Why did he kill Irene Garza? The truth is, no one really knows for sure. Some say it was a crime of power, a man who saw himself as untouchable, using his position as a priest to take advantage of a vulnerable young woman. Others believe it was driven by something more personal, something darker, perhaps an anger or resentment that had built up over time. Was it the abuse of his authority? Was it a loss of control in the moment? Or maybe, just maybe, it was something deep inside him, something broken, that led him to take Irene's life in such a brutal and cold-hearted way? Even now, after the trial, we can only guess at his true motivation. Clayton never gave a clear answer, never truly revealed why he chose Irene as his victim, or what was going through his mind when he took her life. All we know for certain is that a woman full of potential, full of life, was senselessly murdered by a man who should have been a protector, not a predator. And so the questions remain. Why did he do it? Was it about power? Was it a twisted act of passion? Or was it something even more chilling, a cold, calculated decision to silence a woman who trusted him? But here's where you come in. What do you think? Why do you think Father Feit killed Irene Garza? Was it a crime of opportunity, a moment of uncontrollable rage, or something deeper that only he truly knew? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Share your theories, your reflections, because this story is far from over. Even after justice was served, the haunting question of why still lingers, and we may never truly understand the mind of a man capable of such horror. But as long as we keep asking these questions, as long as we continue to remember Irene's story, her legacy lives on, and the fight for justice, for truth, will never stop. So tell us what you believe, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe so we can continue uncovering the truth behind the cases that still leave us searching for answers. See you in my next video.